Hey, good afternoon, everybody. It is February 15th, 2023, and we are in the Old Testament. We're in the book of Genesis. We're going to read chapter 41, verse 37 to 57 today. Okay, so we're still talking about Joseph. We just, keep telling you that as we look at these dreams and see that God is working on the relationship with us through Joseph, and the thing he's working on here is humility, humbleness. Well, we'll say humbleness. He wants us to be humble. He wants us to stop thinking about ourselves and think about God. Not about my will, it's about God's will. And a good example that we saw here was the dreams, Joseph and his dreams. We saw that first set of dreams that he had, and Joseph was not humble at all. He exalted himself. Wow, look at me, I'm dreaming these dreams, I'm going to be important. And he wanted everyone to know how important God was going to make him. And God said, well, you know what? Nothing's going to, well, I was going to say nothing's going to happen, but he ended up being sold into slavery, ends up being thrown into prison. So what he thought was going to happen was not what happened. God had other plans. As he's in prison, we get another set of dreams from the baker and the cupbearer. And I said that Joseph shows us humility, but not humbleness. So he lessens his role, but he still wants to hold on to a piece, because he tells them, hey, you know what? I can't interpret your dreams. God is going to give you the interpretation of your dreams. And he gives them God's interpretation of his dreams. And then he says, but, even though the words came from God, remember they came out of my lips. When you go to Pharaoh, remember that I'm the one that told you. So he humbled himself a little bit and gave the message, but then he wanted to get a little bit of credit for it. And what was the result? Well, God left him in prison. He stayed where he was. There was no salvation. Pharaoh didn't know and left him out. We see this third set of dreams. Now we've got humbleness on Joseph's part, because when Joseph is called before Pharaoh to tell him this dream, he tells him, hey, you know what? This is I can't do anything. God is the one that interprets the dreams. God's going to give you the message. He gives them the message. He tells them, this is what God says. This is what God wants you to do. And that's it. He leaves himself completely out of it. Now what does God do? Well, we're going to get to that in this section. Now God says, oh, now I've got what I want from you. Now you understand that it's about me and not you. And now I'm going to lift you up, because now you're serving me. And you understand where the gifts are coming from. So let's go ahead, and we're going to read Genesis chapter 41, verse 37 to 57. So the advice was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find such a man as this, one in whom is the Spirit of God? Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, inasmuch as God has shown you all this, there was no one as discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and all my people shall be ruled according to your word. Only in regard to the throne will I be greater than you. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you over all the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring off his hand and put it into Joseph's hand. And he clothed him in garments of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. And he had him ride in the second chariot which he had. And they cried out before him, bow the knee. So he set them over all the land of Egypt. Pharaoh also said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without your consent no man may lift his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zapanath-Paneah, and he gave him his wife Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On. So Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. Now in the 7 plentiful years the ground brought forth abundantly. So he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up food in the cities. He laid up in every city the food of the fields which surrounded them. Joseph gathered very much grain as the sands of the sea until he stopped counting, for it was immeasurable. And to Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bore to him. Joseph called the name of his firstborn Manasseh, for God has, I'm going to say that again, Manasseh. For God has made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. And the name of the second he called Ephraim, for God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. Then the 7 years of plenty which were in the land of Egypt ended, and the 7 years of famine began to come, as Joseph had said. The famine was in all land, but in the land of Egypt there was bread. So when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, "Go to Joseph. Whatever he says to you, do." The famine was over all the face of the earth, and Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians. And the famine became severe in the land of Egypt, so all countries came to Joseph in Egypt to buy grain, because the famine was severe in all the lands. May God bless the reading of his word, and may God bless you. Bye.